So far we discussed about outbound application engine. Outbound application engine, it will generate the data file. Okay, I'll set. Okay, one more requirement. Okay, let us say in the outbound, I sent you one spreadsheet. This one yesterday. This is the one I sent you yesterday. Once the file was generated, okay, you will give your file path, whatever it may be. Add one more requirement to this. Your application engine generating the file. Okay, generated successfully. File generated successfully. After completion of the application engine, your outbound file should pick up and send to one email as attachment. You generated outbound file here. Okay, somewhere here you are generating the outbound file. Your application engine generating this outbound file. Once the file was generated successfully, that means your file generating process was done. In the next, your application engine should pick the file and send via email. Hey Joyce, good evening.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, fine, Joyce. Yeah. Have you understood this requirement, all of you? We are generating one outbound file in a specific folder. Once the outbound file was generated, next, the file should pick by this application engine and the file should send as an attachment via email to some user or a group of users. That particular code also should complete within this application engine. Whatever the application engine you are developing, within the application engine, file logic to be completed. Later, send mail code to be completed. Just imagine here, in these two steps, you are completing the application engine file, outbound file generation. In the next step, you have to write a code to send the outbound file as an attachment to the user. Are we clear about it? Any one of you, please let me know if you would like to discuss with me about this outbound requirement. I am ready. Otherwise, we will go to the inbound processing.
Maybe when we are developing, then we need some help from you.
No problem. At present, you understood this requirement, right? Just I am adding a extra line to today. What was that? I am expecting one email functionality to be written within this application engine to send the generated file as an attachment to the user. Okay. Now, with this, we successfully completed the outbound functionality. In outbound, what we are doing? We are generating the file which will send to the users or third party. Now, coming to the inbound. Only two purposes we will use the application engine. Yes, outbound, which will send the data to third party. Inbound, which will collect the data from third party or other people's subsystem to load the data into PeopleSoft. Any other purposes we will use the application engine. Generally, we will call these two are the interfaces. Outbound interface and inbound interface. we can schedule this as a job, as a process. Now, coming to the inbound, just I'm explaining you one scenario. Let us say, let's take the finance system. My client is maintaining the purchasing, okay, in finance, PeopleSoft Finance, but they are not doing the payments in PeopleSoft. They are sending the purchase orders to third-party payment system as an outbound. All approved purchase orders, all some terminology will be there in finance. Dispatched purchase orders will be sent to the third-party payment system via outbound file. Let us imagine third-party payment system completed the payments and they are sending the file to PeopleSoft, back to PeopleSoft. You have to load that particular payments information into the PeopleSoft payment tables. Like the same in HRMS also, in HCM. In PeopleSoft HCM, we are maintaining, in our client side, just imagine, our client is maintaining PeopleSoft Core HCM, Core HRMS, benefits, payroll, not time and labor. Not time and labor. Then, to run the payroll, I need the time card information. How many hours this employee worked for this week? Is there any holidays in this week? Is there any loss of pay? Paid time off? Then, from third-party system, let us imagine it's a Clarity system. From Clarity system, I am getting the file. It's an inbound file, which is coming from the third party. I have to load those data. I have to load that particular data into our PeopleSoft system in the time and labor tables, time card tables. It's an inbound. Outbound and inbound, these two are the interfaces. Other than this, can we use application engine for any other purposes? Yes, you can use application engine to update the databases, to simply load the data in a single table. Outbound is complex based on the client requirement. Already we observed, whenever we started the outbound application engine, on very first step, we simply generated one outbound file. Next, as per the user requirement, we attached run control parameters. Yes, we successfully generated it. Next layer, as per the yesterday's requirement, we are filtering some data based on the previous run. That means the active and terminated employees information I'm talking about. You are sending today active and terminated employees. Tomorrow, I am not sending the terminated employees who are processed today. We are filtering. That means we added some complexity. Later, we added some more complexity in the name of rerun. If user decided to rerun the application engine, then you have to send the full file again. We added some more complexity. Next, today, what I told you, please design email functionality. That means outbound application engine will be complex based on the user requirements. Now, coming to the inbound. That means in the outbound application engine, we are developing the application engine step by step based on the complexities, based on the functionalities we are adding. Now, coming to the inbound. Inbound looks like it's a complex procedure, but what I'm saying, it's not. Have you remember whenever we are discussing the PeopleCode Rosette functionality? On the very first day, we are discussing about parent and child relationships within the people code. We written the row sets, level 0, level 1, level 2, and level 3. If you remember that concept, then whatever we are going to discuss in the inbound, it will be very easy. Why we should remember that row set concept? Why? Because we are loading the data into PeopleSoft, not in a single record. This is my point. Let us imagine, okay, we have our own component with us. We created our own component here. In this particular component here, we created our own component with some complex structure here. Whenever I am asking load the data in this component, yes, this is called component load. This is not a single record load. Venkat, within the component, records will be there. Yes, I understood. But how you will load the data? You have to maintain the data integrity. Whenever you are loading employee, whenever you are loading dependent or institution or location in this particular structure, you have to load it in a manner like how you are adding the data in the front end. If I am giving you an Excel sheet with some details, 2 employees details, for each employee 2 dependents, for a dependent 2 institution details, something like that. Then what you will do, generally you will open the component, go here, generally you will open the component and you will add a new value. Okay, you will add the employee ID and you will add the details from the Excel sheet, and you will pick two dependents for this employee ID and you will add it. For each dependent, how many institutions, you will add it. Once you clicked on the save at the bottom, each and every detail will be stored in all of the tables, like employee table, dependent table, education table, location table, national identification table, salary table. Exactly the same procedure I would like to perform from the back end. Whatever you are doing from the front end, I would like to do from the back end. Yes. How we will design this? Why? Because by looking at the spreadsheet, you can enter hardly 1 or 2 or 50, but sometimes you will get the data in thousands. Just imagine 1,000 employees data you are loading. How many dependents are there for each dependent? How many educational details are there? Blah, blah. Too many. We have to design a process. This is called component load. Okay. In the application engine, inbound processing, how many tools we will use? Application engine, file layout, component, interface. These 3 tools we will use in the inbound application engine load. Application engine inbounding. Here we have 2 steps. I can say it's 2 phases of load. In the first phase, load the file data into staging tables. Here we will use application engine and file layout tools. In the next step, load the data from staging tables to component tables. Here we will use AE and CI, application engine and component interface. Two phases. You can say two steps. Then I'm getting a doubt as a learner. Venkat, why don't we load the data from file to component tables directly? Why we are including a staging table in between? You're getting a file from third party. Why don't you read the data from file? Why don't you load directly in the component tables? Yes. Why? Because it's a component load. Whenever I'm asking you to fill the data in the component by looking at the spreadsheet, generally what you will do, you will add the data manually. At the time of adding the data, some validations you written in the component, like gender should be male, female, or unknown. All other values it won't accept. If I'm giving you in the spreadsheet, gender, F, acceptable, M, acceptable, U, acceptable, A is not acceptable, then you will reject that spreadsheet and you will ask me, Venkat, this particular data is wrong. We written some validation for NID. Okay, let us say you designed NID should be in a proper format like this. Then I am giving the NID in a different format. Then the file should be rejected. Compensation, we designed some validations for basic salary. We designed some validations for allowances. We are calculating the gross automatically based on this basic and allowances. Each and every validation will fire at the time of adding the data, entering the data, saving the component. You know one thing? Each and every validation should fire from the back end whenever you're trying to load the data into the component. Each and every validation will fire. Now, whenever you are getting the file data, let us say your file data is like this: employee ID, name, A1, test 1, A2, test 2, something like this. This is employee file. Next, dependent file will be like this: employee ID, dependent name, employee ID A1, like this. Then how the system will react? System will first pick the employee ID from the employee file. First it will validate all the employee details are perfect or not. Once it was done, it will go to the dependent details. It will pick how many dependents are there for this employee. Like that, it's a chain. It will go. That means system will take some time to load the data, to validate the data. Why? Because at the time of loading the data in the component, it will validate the things. You are getting a file from the third party. Your file will be in the file server. Your application engine is in your application server. That means here we are interacting in between the servers for each and every transaction to collect the data, load the data, collect the data, load the data by performing all the validations. Sometimes some miscommunication happens, some failures happen in between the servers, performance issues may occur. That's why in the very initial step, what I will do, I will load all the file data. It's a right or wrong. I will load in the staging table. What is staging table? It's nothing. Whatever the main tables you are targeting to load, I will create some replica. The same tables I will create with some other name. Temporary, not temporary tables. Database tables only, but Initial load I will do into the staging tables without performing any validation. Any validation. I will just pick the file data and I will keep it in the staging table. Staging table, where it is in your application, it is in your PeopleSoft database. Then no worries, nothing about the performance. There is no issue about performance. Why? Because you are interacting within your database, you are interacting within your server. Then it will be easy. I'm getting one more doubt, like third-party system. We are interacting, we are getting data from third-party system. How third-party system knows about our table structure? Yes. Why? Because in my application, in my PeopleSoft application, my key fields are employee ID, department, location, something in my table. In my table, employee ID, department, location, job code, 4 mandatory fields. If I would like to load the data in the particular table, I have to load minimum. That means 4 mandatory fields are there in the record. It won't accept null. Whenever in our client side, we decided we are going to design one inbound application engine. We will give our requirements to the third party. We are expecting data in this format. We are expecting data fields, all these fields in the input file. The same. How third party is asking us for an outbound, I am expecting all these details, all these fields to be there. Like that, the same, we will give them our database structures, and we will give them what are all the fields are required in the input file. Once the design was done, they will send us one input file. We will do one thing. We will try to design the inbound process based on our own component first. This is our component. We design this component. This is the structure of our component. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. 2 more level 1s within the same component. How many tables are there in our component? Employee table is there, dependent table, institution table, location table, NID table, salary table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables will be populated after completing one transaction. Six tables will be populated. Next, there is no client for us, then we will design our own files. Okay, how it is? This is our employee table structure. Just I am designing a file. Employee ID, what are the details required here? Employee ID, name, employee ID, name, joining date 01/01/2017, 01/01/2016. Okay, gender, male, female. Okay, those things are enough for me to load the data.
We have to check
Yeah,
fields,
Andy.
no general.
Huh?
We have to check the key fields.
That's what I'm saying. Key fields are there, right? Next, gender. Okay, next, I'm removing the heading. It's enough for me. File, save as. Okay, let us say inbound. Here I'm creating a folder. Here I'm creating my files, employee CSV files I'm creating. Now go to the next dependent table. Dependent table, employee ID must and should be there. Why? Because employee ID is a key field here. Next, dependent information. For the same employee, I have two dependents. For this employee also, I have two dependents. Then dependent ID is required. D01. Next, dependent name. Okay, dep1. Next, dependent date of birth it is 10. Dependent gender male. Okay, the same. First employee, second dependent, second employee, first dependent and second dependent. Now save it as dependent. Third file I'm creating for institution. For institution I'm creating. For institution, what are the key fields? Employee ID must and should be there, dependent ID, institution. Okay, here is the institution ID. Institution 01, institution number 1, institution name ABC. For the first employee, first dependent, institution number 2. For the first employee, second dependent, institution number 1. First employee, second dependent, institution number 2. Next, second employee, first dependent, institution number 1. Second employee, first dependent, institution number 2. Second employee, dependent number 2, institution number 1. Now save it as institution. Next, level 3, location data. Employee ID, dependent ID, institution, location. Location 1, California. First employee, first dependent, institution 1, location 2, Texas. First employee, second dependent, institution 1, location 1, California. Second employee, dependent 1, institution 1, location 1, California. Second employee, dependent 2, institution 1, location 1, California. Now just save it as location.csv. Next, level 1, salary table or NID table. NID table again, we will go with NID table. Why? Because it's a child of employee. NID table, employee ID, country, both are mandatory. Okay, employee ID, country, and employee ID, USA, employee ID, country, This is my NID table. Save as. Why? Because here country, national ID, enough. It is NID.CSV. Last and final one is the salary. Again, the employee, what job code? J1, job 1, otherwise salary 6,000, allowance 200. First employee, job number 2. Second employee, job number 1. Second employee, job number 2. Now just save it as salary.csv. Finally, we created all the files. Now we can imagine, okay, all these 6 file data we are getting from our client. Now we are preparing ourselves from the PeopleSoft side. We have to design this step. Application engine and file layout we are going to use in this particular phase. We are targeting a file data load into our staging tables. Where are the staging tables? Please create them. How can I? Very simple. Open the employee table. Open the employee table. You would like to load this. Finally, you are targeting the file, employee file data will load into this employee table. But before that, I would like to load it in a staging. Then file, save as. I'm creating a replica of this record. STG, staging. Employee staging. I don't want any people code with this. Enough. Structure is always same. We have to build it. Why? Because we are expecting data to be loaded. Build it. Create the table. Just check the table availability in the database. As simple as that, we open the table, we make it as a save as. Now the second table, dependent table, file, save as, dependent, staging table. No people code is required for me. Next, build it. Now open the database and just run this queries to confirm the tables was created successfully. Select star from employee staging. Yes, it was created. Dependent. Yes, it was created. Next, the same we will follow for institution. File, save as, institution staging table. Build it. Every time please save the project. Why? Because some records are adding to your project. Next, location, file, save as, location, staging table. Next, build it, create the tables. We successfully built it. Next, the same for the remaining level ones, NID table and salary. Save as, NID, staging table. Next and last and final one is the salary. Salary, I am creating a staging table for this. Build it. Just make sure all the tables were built properly. Dependent, institution staging table. Yes, built properly. Next, location. Yes. Next, NID. Okay. Next, salary. Okay, confirmed. All the staging tables were built. Next, what we have to do, we have to create one application engine and file layout. What is file layout? File layout is a tool. Simply, it's a tool. Okay, go ahead. new file layout. As like as you are creating a field, record, page, and component application engine, here we will create a file layout. File layout is a tool which will helps us to compare the file structure with our staging record structure, and it will helps us to load the data into the PeopleSoft system, and it will helps us to generate the data as an outbound file from the PeopleSoft system. In both, we will use file layout tool in inbound and outbound also. Next, file layout. It has two tabs, definition and preview. In the definition tab, insert your record. What was the record? Your staging table. EMP staging table you have to insert. This is the staging table. Go to the preview. Browse it. In the inbound, employee. This is the file I am targeting to load in this table. I selected the file. Segment. This is your staging. Have you observed one thing? All these are the fields available in the table. It will give you the clear characteristics like this employee ID. Field length is 15. Name. Field length is 30. Joining date. Gender. Number. Act. All these are the details you are getting. But at the bottom you see, what is this? The entire data is storing in the employee ID. Why? Why? Because file layout it will accept 3 file formats: fixed, CSV, XML. Venkata, our file is CSV, but where we convert the same message to the file layout, my file is CSV. Just you added an extension to the file, but you have to convey a clear message to the system. I am loading a CSV file. Where? In the properties of this file layout. Go to the use. As of now, the default option file layout format is fixed. File layout type is fixed. Now you have to change it to CSV. Click on OK. Now go to the preview. Observe clearly. Data sitting properly. Employee ID, name, joining date, gender. Now save your file layout first. Employee file layout. Now data sitting in the record properly. This is the CSV file. We know how to create a CSV file like this. Comma, separated version CSV means. How the fixed length file? We created the CSV file like this. A1, comma, test1, something like this. This is the format of CSV. Then how will be the fixed length? A1 is the employee ID, but employee ID length is 15 characters. Then you already filled 2 characters. The remaining 13 characters you have to give as a space. Next, test1, 5 characters filled, but your name is 30 characters. The remaining 25 characters space. Next, date. Like this, it will. That means in your fixed length file, if you are receiving a fixed length file, file will be like this. If you are receiving an XML file, XML tags will come like this. These 3 are the file formats accepted by file layout. Now our file is CSV. We successfully picked the file and data sitting in the table properly. Is the data loaded in the table? Check it in the backend. No, not at all. But what is this? It's just a preview. That's why this tab name is preview. You have only 2 rows, that's why it is showing 2 rows. If you have 1,000 rows, is it going to show 1,000 rows? No, hardly 5 rows. It's for our understanding. Now we can conclude one thing. File layout will help us to compare the file structure with staging table. Or not a staging table, any table we are using in the file layout. Next, try to create file layout for all the remaining files. Insert, record, staging table. Next, browse your dependent, go to the file layout properties, change it to CSV. Next, just save it as dependent file layout. Next, the same for institution. Institution, staging table, review, choose the file layout format as CSV. Now just save it as. Next, create the file layout for location, choose your location and change the CSV. File layout. Next, one more file layout for NID. Choose the file format of NID here. Next and last and final one, salary. Salary. Next, we successfully created the file layout definitions. In our step, we successfully created the file layout and we created the staging tables. What left? Only left is application engine. Now creating the application engine. Just save it as a name, employee load. It's an application engine we are going to create now. Now, what we have to do? We have a file with us. We have staging table. We have file layout. Generally, what we will do? To read the data from the file, open the file, get file, open the file, read the data, load the data in the staging. Generally, we have to write all this stuff. In the step 1, people code, simply drag and drop the employee file layout into your people code. Everything, entire people code will generate for you. Nothing to change. No need to change. Simply save it. What is this people code? Have you observed? This is one function, edit record. This is one more function, import segment. 2 functions they written in the people code. This is the original people code. People code to import the data. Yes, we are importing the data. Where is the file? File is in the location. Desktop AE practice inbound employee.csv. Venkat, it's our demo machine. That's why in the file layout itself, we are selecting by using this option. But in real time, we can't do that. Why? Because In real time, number of environments might be there. Then in that particular scenario, no need to select from here. You can change the file path directly here. Okay, we are opening the file. We know about this get file command. Already we discussed about it. Get file in our outbound discussions. Get file. Employee.csv. In which mode? Write mode. Write mode. File path absolute. We are opening. System is opening one log file to capture the errors. That's it. In the same location, they are capturing the errors. Error file. Next, with respect to this file, they are linking the file layout. Log file, they are linking the file layout. Next, they are creating a row set. Based on what? Row set means it needs a structure. What is the structure of the row set? They are deciding the structure of the row set based on the staging table structure. Done. Insert the data. Import the segment here. That means whenever they are running a loop to load the data, they are calling a function import segment. Here is the function. In the function, they are writing the create SQL. They are collecting the data from the file and they are loading the data. Now, are we going to change anything here? Nothing to change. Then Venkat, what we have to do? Write the same steps for all other files. Dependent file layout. You can write your description for better understanding. Employee load. Employee staging load. Dependent staging load. Like that, you can include the remaining file layouts here. Institution. Next, in the step 4, location. Next, in the step 5, NID. Step 6, salary. We successfully created the application engine. Next, Venkat. Simple, run it. Our target is loading the file data into staging. Yes. Run it. Run the application engine by giving one run control ID and one process instance. Your application engine is running. Your error files are generated with 0. That means nothing got errored out. Where we can check the data. First, you can check your log file here. Application engine ended normally. Fine. Now check the data. Employee data loaded. Dependent data loaded. Institution. Location. NID. Salary. All the staging tables loaded perfectly. You know one thing? If your user is saying, I don't want any validations, please blindly load the data from file to component records. Go ahead and use direct record references instead of staging table. Then data will be loaded in the direct tables instead of staging tables. Now, as a learner, I am getting it out. Venkat, you are loading employee first, next dependent. All these are the stagings. Can I load employee next? In the next step, can I load location table? In the next step, can I load salary table? That means there is no order I am maintaining. Is it okay? 100% it is okay. Why? Because we are not loading in a parent and child manner. We are directly loading the data in a record. We are hitting the record. We are not hitting the component. That means if you see, after step 1, employee staging load, I'm calling Venkat. The remaining, the next load is salary load. Is it okay? No problem. Why? Because we are hitting the record directly. Now we successfully completed the phase 1. App engine and file layout combination. We successfully read the data from file and we loaded the data into the staging table. Next, what we have to do in the next step, we have to load the staging table data. We have to load the data from staging table to component records. What are those component records? These are the component records. Employee table, dependent table, institution table, all those. At this point of time, your validation should fire. What is the validation? Yes, validation in the sense, what are all the people code you written in your component? What are all the properties? Properties means mandatory field. You applied some mandatory field for name or some other things. All validations, properties, each and everything will fire at this time of load. The load we are performing from staging table to component. We are going to use 2 more tools. Application engine already we created. 1 more tool we will use, component interface, which will taking care of all the validations. Component interface is a tool which will taking care of all the validations. Please keep in mind, component interface we will use only in the inbound purposes, not in the outbound. But file layout we will use in the outbound also. Please go ahead and try to complete the first step what we discussed today. Simply create your own files, based on that, staging records, file layouts. It's just straightforward. There is no logic involved. Even I haven't suggested you to change the code what we generated. Sometimes we have to change some coding, but at present I am not suggesting you to change any code. Any doubts or questions? Srini?
Suppose instead of the multiple files, we got the only one file, then what we have to do?
One file with multiple rows, right? Employee, dependent,
Yeah, like, yeah.
Same file, right?
Yes.
Then we have to use some different context there. We have to use the segment instead of using a single record here. You can use the segment. You can create a parent and child here also.
Okay, there.
But not now, Srini.
Okay. No, just I'm asking.
Yeah, no. You're 100% right. File record name. Okay, like that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. No, I'm asking about sometimes we're getting the general header and line.
Right. Understood. Completely understood. Even the file will be like this. In the first line, employee. In the second line itself, for that employee, how many dependents?
Yeah.
Yes, situations may occur like that.
Because in the real life, then they're asking the file, only one file, not multiple files.
Depends, Srini, how they are preparing the system. That's important. Got it?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Geeta, are we clear? Subhash. Okay. Please try to understood this. I will send you the recording. Please have a review and we will discuss more in the tomorrow session about the inbound. Okay, no problem.